The wind howled through the jagged peaks of the northern mountains, carrying with it whispers that felt older than time itself. Kael tightened his cloak against the biting chill, each gust a reminder that the world beyond the valley was both dangerous and alive. He had walked this path countless times in dreams, yet now, standing on the precipice of reality, every stone beneath his boots seemed to hum with unseen energy. From childhood, he had been drawn to the stories of his ancestors, their wisdom, their triumphs, and their mysterious disappearances. His grandmother used to say, "The past speaks to those who listen, Kael. It remembers everything we forget." At the time, he thought it was just the fanciful musings of an old woman, steeped in superstition. But tonight, under the silver gaze of the moon, he understood her words in ways he had never imagined. He was not alone. Behind him, the faint crunch of snow signaled the approach of another traveler. Turning, Kael glimpsed Mira, her dark eyes glinting with both determination and fear. She was a scholar by training but an adventurer by heart, drawn to the legends of the ancients just as he was. "Kael," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind, "are you sure this is the right place?" Kael nodded, pointing toward the valley below. It stretched endlessly, dotted with the ruins of stone temples half buried in snow and ice. The village elders had spoken of this place only in hushed tones, a sacred site where the ancients had inscribed the secrets of survival, knowledge, and wisdom into the earth itself. It was said that only those who approached with pure intent could read the messages etched into the stones. As they descended, the temperature seemed to drop even further, and an unnatural mist began to curl around their boots. The ruins emerged gradually from the fog, walls cracked and worn by centuries, statues of forgotten deities watching silently with hollow eyes. Kael's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the place that had called to him in dreams, that had haunted the tales of his childhood. Mira knelt beside one of the statues, brushing away centuries of frost and dust. "Look at these markings," she murmured. The symbols glimmered faintly under her fingertips, as though responding to her touch. They were not just letters or numbers, they were a language of thought, of memory, of survival. How to live in harmony with the harshest climates, how to read the skies, how to anticipate the movements of wild herds, Kael realized. Every symbol was a fragment of ancestral intelligence, preserved for those willing to listen. Night fell swiftly, swallowing the valley in darkness. Kael lit a small fire near the ruins, the flames flickering against the ancient stones. Shadows danced across the walls, giving life to the statues, making them seem almost human. Mira leaned close, tracing the carvings with her fingers. "It's like they're speaking to us," she said softly. "As if they knew we'd come." Kael felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. He realized then that this was more than a quest for knowledge, it was a confrontation with the past itself. The ancients had lived and thrived in a world harsher than his own. They had understood patience, endurance, and intelligence in ways that modern minds often overlooked. And now, it seemed, their voices were reaching across the centuries to guide him. A sudden gust swept through the valley, scattering sparks from the fire. The statues seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, and Kael caught a movement out of the corner of his eye, a shadow among shadows. Heart racing, he rose to his feet. "Who's there?" he demanded, but only the wind answered. Then he saw it, a faint glow emanating from the largest temple at the valley's center, a light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Mira grabbed his arm. "This way," she urged, pointing toward the temple. Together, they navigated the treacherous snow-covered paths, each step revealing carvings that hinted at ancient rituals, survival strategies, and stories of immense courage. The temple doors loomed before them, massive slabs of stone covered in cryptic inscriptions. Kael pressed his hand against the cold surface, and a warmth spread through him as though the stone recognized his presence. Inside, the air was strangely still, filled with a scent of earth and something older, something that felt alive. Pillars rose to the vaulted ceiling, adorned with murals that depicted humans living in harmony with nature, hunting, celebrating, and creating. But at the center of the chamber lay a circular stone, etched with an intricate pattern that seemed to move when observed. It was a map of knowledge, a record of what the ancients had learned over centuries. Kael knelt, tracing the grooves with his fingers. "This is incredible," he breathed. It's a guide, a manual for survival, for understanding the world in ways we've forgotten. Mira's eyes shone with awe as she read the carvings aloud, translating the language of thought into words. Hours passed, and the world outside faded into nothingness. For the first time, Kael understood the depth of what the ancients had left behind. Lessons in patience, observation, and wisdom, ways to endure adversity without losing sight of humanity. But knowledge came with a warning. Among the carvings, they found a depiction of a cycle, an ancient pattern of hubris and downfall, a reminder that intelligence without humility could bring ruin. Kael's chest tightened. These were not just instructions, they were a test. Would the modern world heed these lessons, or would it repeat the mistakes of the past? Mira finally broke the silence. "We have to bring this back," she said, voice trembling with excitement and fear. "The world needs to see this." Kael nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing upon him. They documented every carving, every symbol, every story etched into the temple walls, knowing that this knowledge could change how humanity understood itself. The journey back was treacherous. Snowstorms rose without warning, and the wind carried voices that seemed to mimic the whispers of the ancients. Yet Kael felt stronger, guided not just by instinct but by the wisdom they had unlocked. Every step was a lesson in endurance, every breath a reminder of the intelligence that had survived centuries. By the time they reached the edge of the valley, the sun had begun to rise, casting golden light over the ruins. Kael looked back, feeling a mixture of reverence and sorrow. The ancients had left a gift, but also a challenge, to remember, to learn, and to survive without repeating the mistakes that had once threatened to erase them. They returned to their village as the first snow melted, carrying scrolls, sketches, and stories that would change their community forever. Elders listened in awe, children leaned close in wonder, and Kael felt the presence of the ancients as palpably as the beating of his own heart. Their voices, once whispers in the wind, had become a guiding light. And in the quiet moments, when Kael closed his eyes, he could still feel the pulse of the valley, the heartbeat of civilizations long past. Reminding him that survival, wisdom, and courage were not just history, they were living, breathing legacies, waiting for those willing to listen. Days after returning from the valley, Kael found that sleep had become a fragile thing. Each night, the whispers of the ancients returned, not in dreams but as vivid visions. He saw their villages, their ceremonies, and the way they had anticipated storms and harsh winters with uncanny precision. Mira had the same experience during their discussions. She described seeing the symbols animate, as if the carvings themselves were alive, guiding their thoughts. The village council gathered to hear Kael and Mira recount their journey. At first, the elders were skeptical, dismissing the ruins as mere remnants of a forgotten culture. But as Mira unrolled sketches and diagrams of the carvings, even the most hardened doubters could not ignore the intricate knowledge of survival and strategy that the ancients had left behind. They spoke not only of hunting techniques or agriculture but of profound lessons in empathy, leadership, and understanding the rhythms of the natural world. Kael noticed a pattern in the carvings. The ancients had used their knowledge as both a tool and a moral compass. Every invention, every survival method, was paired with a warning. Knowledge without wisdom is like fire without control, one mural seemed to say, depicting a village consumed by flames when pride overtook reason. Kael shivered at the implication. The past was not just a map, it was a mirror, reflecting the potential flaws of any society that failed to heed it. One evening, as they pored over their documentation, Mira's eyes widened. "Kael, look at this," she whispered. On one of the temple murals, they had overlooked a smaller, hidden sequence of symbols. Unlike the others, these symbols moved when observed closely, forming a pattern of celestial alignments. "It's a calendar, no, more than that. It's a guide to natural cycles, storms, floods, even migrations of animals," Mira said. Her voice trembled with excitement. They weren't just survivors, they were masters of the environment. Kael traced the symbols with his finger, feeling a deep connection to those long-gone people. He realized that the ancients had designed a life in harmony with the world around them, combining observation, patience, and innovation. This could change everything," he murmured. But then the weight of responsibility sank in. If humanity misused this knowledge, if it fell into greed or arrogance, the lessons of the past could turn into warnings unheeded, repeating cycles of ruin. Night after night, Kael and Mira worked together, translating the carvings into a codified record that could survive time itself. Their bond deepened with every discovery, each shared insight, each mutual astonishment, brought them closer not just as colleagues but as kindred spirits. They laughed together, argued over interpretations, and sometimes sat in silence, feeling the pulse of history hum beneath their fingertips. Then, one evening, a storm unlike any they had seen before swept across the village. Lightning fractured the sky, and the wind roared as if the ancients themselves were testing their resolve. Kael grabbed Mira's hand, dragging her to the safety of their cabin, but even as the walls shook, he felt a strange reassurance in the storm's fury. The elements were fierce, but they had survived before, and so could they, guided by knowledge older than memory. The storm passed, leaving the village cloaked in a heavy fog. Trees bent under the weight of ice, and rivers swelled with melted snow. Kael knew that survival wasn't theoretical, the ancients' teachings had to be applied immediately. Using the carvings as a guide, he and Mira led teams to shore up the village's defenses, build channels for floodwaters, and prepare safe shelters. For the first time, the villagers saw the practical value of the ancients' wisdom. Crops were protected, livestock saved, and families who had feared the storm found safety. Kael realized that the knowledge they carried was not just academic, it was alive. Breathing in every choice they made. Each mural and symbol became a tool, a living strategy to endure hardship. One night, after the storm had subsided, Kael wandered back to the edge of the valley. The ruins glimmered faintly under the moonlight, calling to him once again. He felt the presence of those who had come before, voices in the wind, guiding, warning, inspiring. For the first time, he understood the true gift the ancients had left, not just instructions for survival, but a philosophy of living. A way to approach the world with humility, intelligence, and courage. Mira joined him silently, her breath visible in the cold night air. "Do you feel it too?" she asked. Kael nodded. "They're still here, not in body, but in what they taught us, in what we carry forward." Together, they stood in silence, listening to the whispers of the past, understanding that history was not a static record but a living thread connecting generations. As weeks turned into months, Kael and Mira's work became a beacon for the surrounding regions. Scholars, adventurers, and curious minds traveled to their village, eager to learn from the translations of the ancients' wisdom. The valley, once isolated and forgotten, became a hub of knowledge and discovery. And yet, Kael never lost the sense of awe, the delicate balance between human ambition and the timeless intelligence of those who had lived before. But the story was not without peril. Rival factions, hearing rumors of the ancient secrets, sought to exploit them for power. Kael and Mira faced threats not just from nature but from human greed. They realized that the true challenge of their journey was not reaching the ruins, but protecting and applying the knowledge responsibly. Every decision became a moral test, echoing the warnings carved in stone centuries ago. Weeks passed, and Kael and Mira's village had transformed into a living testament to the ancients' wisdom. The carvings had inspired new methods of farming, architecture, and community organization. Children learned not just from books but from the land itself, observing weather patterns, animal behavior, and natural cycles with newfound respect. The village thrived in ways previously unimaginable, a blend of past knowledge and present determination. But tranquility was not eternal. Word of the ancients' secrets had spread far beyond the mountains. One night, a shadowed figure approached Kael's cabin. He felt it before he saw it, the unnatural silence of the forest, broken only by the faint crackle of a branch. Mira, sensing his unease, placed her hand on his shoulder. "Kael, be careful," she whispered. The intruder stepped into the moonlight, revealing a group of men armed with greed and ambition. They had come not for knowledge, but for control. Kael's pulse quickened, but he remembered the lessons of the ancients: patience, observation, and courage. "We can't let them take this," he said quietly. Mira nodded, determination lighting her eyes. Together, they guided the villagers into hidden tunnels and safe shelters carved beneath the valley, using maps and knowledge gleaned from the ruins. The confrontation was inevitable. The outsiders, confident and ruthless, stormed the valley, seeking the temple and its secrets. Kael and Mira led them into a series of clever diversions, channels that flooded when triggered, pathways that collapsed under weight, and illusions crafted from the natural environment itself. Every tactic was drawn from the ancients' wisdom, every step a reminder of the power of knowledge tempered by respect for life. By dawn, the invaders were defeated, not through brute force, but through ingenuity. Exhausted but triumphant, Kael and Mira surveyed the valley. The ruins had endured, and so had the knowledge they carried. The ancients had built more than stone temples, they had left a philosophy, a way of thinking that could outlast ambition and greed. In the quiet aftermath, Kael and Mira returned to the temple. The circular stone at its center glimmered faintly in the morning light, as if acknowledging their triumph. Kael pressed his hand to it again, feeling warmth and connection. "We did it," he murmured. "Not just for us, but for everyone who will follow this path." Mira smiled, exhaustion and relief mingling in her expression. "They were never gone," she said softly. "They were waiting for the right minds to carry on their legacy." Together, they documented every detail of the temple and its carvings, creating scrolls, charts, and guides that would survive centuries. Unlike the intruders, they understood that knowledge was a responsibility, not a weapon. And as they worked, the valley seemed to hum around them, alive with the pulse of history, as if the ancients themselves were watching and approving. Over the years, the village became a center of learning and inspiration. Scholars, adventurers, and even rulers visited, seeking to understand the principles of survival, wisdom, and harmony embedded in the ancients' teachings. Kael and Mira taught not only the methods but also the mindset, the patience, humility, and respect for nature that had sustained civilizations long before theirs. Yet, Kael often returned alone to the edge of the valley, standing where the wind carried whispers of the past. He could see the shadows of the ancients in the trees, feel their presence in the rhythm of the earth, and hear their lessons in the rustle of leaves. They had left a path, not a destination, and it was up to each generation to walk it wisely. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in fiery hues, Mira joined him. "Do you think we've done enough?" she asked. Kael shook his head with a smile. "It's never enough. But every step we take honors them, and every lesson we share ensures their voices live on." The wind swept across the valley, carrying with it the echoes of the ancients' laughter, wisdom, and courage. Kael and Mira stood side by side, feeling the weight of history and the light of discovery intertwine. In that moment, they understood the true gift they had received, the power to connect past and present, to survive, to learn, and to inspire. And so, the valley remained alive, not just with snow and stone, but with memory, wisdom, and the heartbeat of civilizations long past. The ancients had left a legacy, and now, through Kael and Mira, it would endure, guiding humanity toward a future built not on conquest, but on understanding, courage, and the eternal mind of those who came before.